All right, I will say good morning. So exciting, Baruch Hashem, to be able to begin a new Masechta, and again the week of Rosh Chodesh Elul. And the truth is, again, getting the, which was such a magnificent Masechta, but the entire essence of the Masechta was one of separation, one of disconnect. And how beautiful it is to be in a Masechta now of Kiddushin, where the entire essence of the Masechta is connection. It's connection, and as we enter into this month of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, the month where we celebrate the betrothal and the re-energizing of the marital bond between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, our closeness to Hashem, that how beautiful is it to begin now Maseches Kiddushin as well. I will say, very exciting months ahead. So let's begin by thanking all of our sponsors. Thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Menachem Av, Benjamin and Elys Wohl, in honor of Moishe Abramson and Jeremy Lasson, for enabling all of those outside of our physical Bais Midrash to be able to participate in our shiurim. To thank Jack Bennett for dedicating all of his shiurim and drushos this month in memory of Sergeant Nicholai Rappaport of the Givati Brigade, who died in the Hezbullah ambush in southern Lebanon in February 1998. And we thank Jerry and Sora Wolasky for dedicating all the shiurim this month and the zechus of refuah sheleimah for Zecharya Dov ben Perel Shira. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, this little boy will have a refuah together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. So with that, let us begin. Bais Aleph Maseches Kiddushin. Let's go. Ha'isha niknis b'shlosha drachim. A woman literally could be acquired in three different ways. I will say, of course, as you know, we're not really, when we speak about Lashon of niknis, Lashon of acquired, so remember again, a woman is not acquired by her husband. We're going to see why the Gemara chooses to use, or the Mishnah chooses to use the Lashon of niknis, of acquired. It's for a very specific way, but rather, again, the better way to understand this is a woman becomes bound in marriage in three different ways. V'kones atzma b'shtei drachim, and she extricates herself from marriage, or she is extricated from the bonds of marriage in two ways. Here we go. So niknis b'kasef b'shtara b'biyah. Ultimately, she is acquired. She is acquired in marriage with money, kasef, shtar, document, biyah, relations. So we'll say three ways to affect Kiddushin. Kasef, so we'll say, so now the Mishnah discusses, so what's kasef? How much kasef is kasef? So Beishamai umrim bedinar b'shavet dinar. So Beishamai says, so dinar, so again we'll get into the specifics of these amounts, or the equivalent of a dinar, something worth a dinar. Beis Hillel says bepruta, or b'shavet pruta. All you need is a pruta or an item worth a pruta. V'kama hi pruta, how much is a pruta? Echad mishmona be'isar ha'Italki. 1/8 of an Italian isra, or Talki isra. Again, we'll discuss all of these amounts. Well, I'll just tell you, kind of just by way of introduction to the Masechta. So, okay, so now you have it, right? Baruch Hashem, we started the first Mishnah in, so exciting. First Mishnah in Maseches Kiddushin, Isha niknis b'shlosha drachim, three ways to affect marriage. Bless you. Kesef, shtar, biyah. Ultimately, she acquires herself in two ways. We'll get to that in just a moment. Kesef, our first machlokes of Maseches Kiddushin. How much kesef is kesef? Beis Shammai saying a dinar, Beis Hillel saying a pruta. And I will say it's interesting. Remember, there's always a connection between Masechtas, right? Always a connection. So it's interesting to note that we ended off Maseches Gittin yesterday with this concept. We developed this idea how the Torah goes ahead and shows us that people get second chances, right? Remember again this whole yisod that we developed, that here you have a woman, right? Especially if you go with the idea, like one of the opinions in the Mishnah said, Beis Shammai said, that you can only divorce your wife that imatza ba davar erva. So one would have thought that after a woman unfortunately experiences such a tremendous moral lapse, that would be the end. The door would be closed, no future for her. Yet I will say, what's the halacha? She's permitted to remarry. Right? So what does that show you? Right? The ability to remarry ultimately highlights to us the ability for second chances. The ability to rebuild yourself even in the aftermath of dramatic failure. And I will say, so right after that, what do you come to? Ha'isha niknis b'shlosha drachim. And I will say, I'll point out to you something amazing. The Tosas already points this out. That why does it say ha'isha? Hey, that hey is the hey hayidiyah, the definitive article. Definitive article. The woman. You could have just said, or say, if you were writing the Mishnah, how would you write it? Isha. Isha niknis b'shlosha drachim. Woman. Right? What do you mean? The woman. So I'll say, I'll share with you something amazing. The Svarim bring down, specifically the Perel Shira, the great tzaddik of Shlomo of Radomsk, says something beautiful. He says, Ha'isha, I meant to say also, there are Daf Yomi notebooks available in the front right here. But thank you, Machi. Thank you, right? We're just missing the Kiddushin stickers. They will, Emeretz Hashem, come in. Rabbi says, they say at the beginning of every Masechta, it's Kedai, in Daf Yomi. Perhaps you are one of the unique people who will remember everything. Most of us, including myself, don't remember everything. But if you could extract a nakuda or two from each daf, a halacha, a dvar hashkafa, a yisod, you write it down in your notebook, you have that with you, that's what your kona, that's what you take with you. So Rabbi says, so the Perel Shlomo brings down something amazing. He says, ha'isha, the woman. Who is the woman a reference to? The Rebbe says, Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael. Ha'isha. And I will say, there's much precedence for this. All of Shir Hashirim, right? All of Shir Hashirim is a metaphor for the love, for the connection, for the marriage between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe Shalom is the Baal, he's the husband, Klal Yisrael is the Isha, although in Shir Hashirim, sometimes the roles reverse a little bit as well. So Ha'isha, says Perel Shlomo, refers to Klal Yisrael. So what does it mean? Aisha niknis b'shlosha drachim. What does it mean that a woman is acquired in three ways? Listen to this. So remember again. So the woman, Klal Yisrael, is acquired to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, creates a relationship with Hashem through three different ways: kesef, shtar, and bia. So it says, listen to this. What it says. Kesef. Get ready. Kesef. Remez leguulas Mitzrayim shahaya bizas Mitzrayim bizasayim. Kesef refers to the redemption from Mitzrayim, the redemption, Egyptian exodus. I will say, what happens when we left Egypt? Rechush gadol. There was a lot of money. We left Egypt with all the wealth of Egypt. Not only that, but after the Egyptians drowned in the Red Sea, remember again, Pasuk says that Moishe Rabbeinu, Vayasa Sa'am, he had to force Klal Yisrael to leave the banks of the Red Sea. Why? They were collecting all of the riches that were washing up on the shore. They didn't want to leave. So Kesef, says the Rebbe, refers to Geulas Mitzrayim. That refers to the first time that the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael was truly concretized and solidified. When we left Egypt, the exodus from Egypt represented or embodied by the wealth. Next, shtar, document. What does that refer to? The Rebbe says, Remez leguulas Ezra sheshalach igros lebavel. I will say, so shtar, documents, represents when Ezra told Klal Yisrael to come back and rebuild the second Bais Hamikdash. What did he do? He sent letters to the Babylonian communities to tell them, come back home. Come back home. Now, unfortunately, we know a lot of Jews didn't come home. They chose to remain in the diaspora. But Lamaisa, again, that's how Ezra chose to try to bring them back home. And I will say, what's Bia? Remez leguula ha'asidim hira b'yameinu. That's Bias Goel. Bias Goel, that's the coming of Mashiach. That's how we refer to Messianic redemption. Bias Goel, the arrival of Mashiach. So I will say, hear how the Masechta is opening. We'll say, do you hear how the Masechta is opening? Ha'isha niknis b'shlosha derachim. We just finished Gittin, and the whole yisod of Gittin is perod, is separation. And so often in our lives, in our relationships with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so if we do things and we behave in ways that often creates a distance, and it leaves us wondering what is the nature and what is the status of the relationship itself. And how does the Masechta begin? Don't worry. Ha'isha, the Isha of Klal Yisrael, as a Klal, as individuals, niknis b'shlosha drama. HaKadosh Baruch Hu already solidified his relationship with us 2 out of 3 times. Kesef, Mitzrayim, Shtar, Bais, Sheni, and in Meretz Hashem, we are waiting for the Bia. We're waiting for the Bias Goel. We're waiting for Mashiach. That's the nature of the relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't I'm speechless. I think the rest of you are you tired or are you also speechless? Overwhelming. I will say again, and this is. I just want to tell you, this is 10 minutes into the Masechta. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. 10 minutes into the Masechta. Okay, we'll say let's go weiter. The Kamahi Pruta. Somebody actually WhatsApped me yesterday. It was one of the guys who listens on the podcast, and he said to me, "This is great." He said, "I'm just wondering, are we also going to do more Gemara than Hasidic Rebbes in the next Masechta as well?" Right? To which I said no. It'll be an equal distribution at most. All right, in any event, let's go back there. Says the Gemara. The kones atzma. So remember again, now that we've established, there are three ways in which marriage is affected: kesef, shtar, and bia. The kones atzma. Now remember, we're using the lashon of kona, right? Niknis. But again, I can't say enough. Remember, in marriage, no party owns the other. Remember, there might be certain entitlements, right? There might be certain rights, like a wife brings property into a marriage, so a husband has usage of that entitlement to certain pay. But Lamais again, I don't want anyone to get thrown by the Lashonos. We're going to discuss why we're using a Lashon of kinyan in just a moment. So the kones atzma, she acquires herself, meaning she extricates herself from the bonds of marriage, beget, okay, throwback, beget, ubemisa sabal, and through the death of her husband. Hayivama, remember again, who's our Yivama? It's funny, right? Anywhere we go, we have Yivama. So who's the Yivama? So remember again, Reuven's married to Rachel. Reuven dies without children. Rachel now falls to Reuven's brother for Yibam. So Hayivama, kniknis babia. So remember again, we'll say, we already spoke about this in Yivamas. A Yivama, right? A Yivama does not require a formal act of Kiddushin. Right? She does not require kesef, she doesn't require shtar, she doesn't require chuppah, because remember again, the whole essence of yibum is the yibum marriage is considered to be an extension of the deceased husband's marriage. So all that's required is bia to be able to affect the marriage. Hayvama niknis bebia, the kone es atzma bechalitza or b'misas habal, and she acquires herself through chalitza, or ultimately again through the death of her husband. No, of the Yavam, Misa say Yavam, death of the Yavam. Good. So we'll say, Mazel Tov, that is our first Mishnah in Maseches Kiddushin. Now here we go. Ha'isha niknis. So we'll say, remember again, so the Mishnah opened up by saying, Ha'isha niknis, that's the Lashon, we'll say literally translated, a woman is acquired. So it says the Gemara, why are we using that Lashon? Ma'ishna hacha detani ha'isha niknis, u'ma'ishna hasam detani ha'ish mekadesh. So Rabbi say, so why is it over here that we use Lashon of Isha Niknis, whereas we're going to see Rabbi say in the second parak, Rashi points out over here, Ma'ishna Hasam, look at Rashi, Parak Sheni Ditana Ha'ish Mekadesh Ubishlucho. So Rabbi say, so Rabbi say, remember, we're going to see the second parak, the Lashon of the Mishnah is Ha'ish Mekadesh, a man betroths. So Rabbi say, what the Gemara is pointing out over here is, in the second parak, when we speak about the mechanism of Kiddushin, the lashon we use is ha'ish mekadesh. We use lashon of mekadesh. So you hear what the kasha is? Why over here do we say ha'isha niknis? A woman is acquired. Why not say over here ha'isha miskadeshas? A woman is betrothed. Right? The same way in the second, and again I will say, even I'm using the lashon of betrothal. The truth is, it's not really what Mekadesh means, but we'll just go with it now. We'll discuss what Mekadesh means in just a little bit. Now let's say, but the point where the Gemara is asking just a syntax question. Why not make it uniform? In the second parak, the lashon is Ha'ish Mekadesh, a man betroths. So we're talking about Kiddushin, as we're talking about over here. So why not use that word of Kiddushin and make the opening Mishnah over here Ha'isha Miskadeshas? Why Ha'isha Niknis? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Let's say we definitely use a lashon over here of kinyan. Why? Because here the Mishnah is introducing us to the concept of kasef. That halacha l'maisa, that kiddushin could be affected through the conveyance of money. You can give money, and that affects kiddushin. The Gemara says the kasef. Now, before we go on, take a quick look at Rashi. Mishum the kaboy lemisnei kesef. Rashi says, Bahani kinyonin. Remember again, Mishnah introduces us to three ways to affect kiddushin: kesef, shtar, and bia. So now, what the Gemara, before we even explain this, what the Gemara is suggesting over here is, remember, we'll say, what's our kasha? Our kasha is why are you using the lashon of niknis, kinyan? Why don't you say ha'isha miskadeshes? It's Kiddushin, right? Same way, second parak, Ha'ish Mekadesh. Answer, because the Mishnah wants to introduce us to the concept of kesef. So before we even know why, the lashon of kinyan is most closely associated with the lashon, with the concept of kesef, of affecting marriage through money. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Bahani kinyan v'amrin on kamon kesef milan de niknispo u'mefarshin de gamrina kicha mistei afron to ikri kinyan." So I said, let me give you the quick answer now. Then we'll expound on it just a little bit. We're going to see that kesef, whenever the Torah talks about kesef, the lashon of by kesef is always lashon of kinyan. Kinyan literally means an acquisition. So therefore, what the Gemara is suggesting over here is, even though we should have really used the lashon of Aisha miskadeshas to make it uniform, first of all, because we're talking about Kiddushin, and it also makes it uniform with the first Mishnah of the second paragraph of Aisha mekadesh, we use the lashon of kinyan, acquisition, because we're being taught that marriage can be affected through kesef, and kesef is a lashon of kinyan, lashon of acquisition. Okay, so let's go. Here we go. The kesef minal, the Gemara says, we're going to pause for just a moment. How do you know that marriage could be affected through kesef? We're taking it for granted. The truth is, we're going to ask this question out of 2 out of the 3. I understand that bia could affect marriage. Makes sense. It's a marital act, right? But we'll leave shtar on the side. How do we know that marriage could be affected through kesef? From where do we know that? So this is asking Gomer, kicha mistei Ephron. Let's make a gzera shava of kicha from stay Ephron. Now we'll say stay Ephron. Remember Parshas Chai Isara, Avram Avinu purchases the field of Ephron as a Maras Machpelah, as a burial plot for Sora Imenu. Watch this. Ksiv hacha. It says over here by Kiddushin, ki yikach ish isha. So we'll say it's lashon of kicha. If a man will take a woman, so ultimately again that's lashon kicha by marriage. Uksiv hasam nasati kesef hasadeh kach mimeni. And I will say biking by Parshas Chayisara. So the Torah says, Avram says to Ephron, I have given you the money for the field, kach mimeni. So I will say, so in other words, Avram Avinu saying to Ephron, I have acquired this field with money. So you see again, so kach over here means Avram is acquiring the field with money. So kicha by stay Ephron means money. Therefore, ki yikach ish isha. Kicha by marriage also means money. Ukicha ikri kinyan. And I will say kicha itself, which means the act of acquisition through money, is called kinyan. Where do I know that from? Dichsiv hasodeh asher kana Avram. Ultimately, again, because it says the field that Avram Avinu acquired. So this is really quite fascinating. First, I just want to point out, this is also interesting because in general, we have a concept of Ein Lameid Davar Mikodem Matan Torah, which is that we don't learn our concepts from before Har Sinai. Right? That's why, for example, again, I will say, even though we have Bris Milah in Chumash Bereshis by Avram Avinu, in fact, where do we learn the mitzvah of Bris Milah from? Where do we learn it from? Parshas Tazviyah. Ubayom Hashmini Yimol B'Sar Arlaso. So it's interesting to note over here that the concept of kesef is being learned out from Parshas Chayisara, which obviously is before Matan Torah, but the truth is, you're not really learning it out from what we're doing is we're making Gzera Shava. So it could very well be that whereas we don't learn our primary halachas from before Matan Torah, Gzera Shavas ultimately again can be learned out even from episodes that occurred before Sinaitic revelation. But I will say, here is what's interesting. Let's pause here for just a second, because this is a monumental piece of information that we just acquired. So we just discovered over here, Kiddushin Daf Bais Midrash. How do I know that marriage could be affected through kesef? How do I know that? And we'll say, answer is, first, Gzera Shava, Kicha mistei Ephron. This is one of the things that goes into your notebook, right? Kicha mistei Ephron. That's famous Gzera Shava. Says again, Kicha by Ephron means money. So too, Kikach ish isha ultimately means money as well. Now, I will say, it's striking, and the truth is, many of the Rishonim and Achronim discuss what's the pshat that the purchase of Maras HaMachpelah becomes the source for one of the mechanisms of marriage. Like what I will say, often what happens is in Gzera Shavas, we don't really think too deeply, because a Gzeir Shava, first a Gzeir Shava is from Moishe Rabbeinu, right? It's brought down through generations. And also it's really just about finding a similar word or a similar phrase that allows you to create a halachic bridge between two concepts. Actually, we'll go a little bit weiter before I go into this. Let's finish this thought. Good. So Gemara says as follows. So good. So Kicha Hasoda Shakran Abram. I'm a base. Inami. Other possibility. So I'll say other possibility that you see ultimately again that kesef is called kinyan. Inami sados ba kesef yiknu. Okay, Gemara quotes the pasuk over here from Yirmiyahu. They will go ahead, sados ba kesef yiknu. They will purchase fields with money. Once again, you see kesef is lashon kinyan. Kesef is lashon kinyan. So I will say. So look what we've just proven right now. Remember what was our question? Why does our follow the flow? Why does our Mishnah say Ha'isha niknis? What should it say? Ha'isha miskadeshes. Make it uniform. We're talking about Kiddushin. Answer, so question asked, question answered, because the Mishnah is introducing us to Kesef. By the way, parenthetically, how do you know that Kesef affects marriage? Ultimately, Gzeir Shava kicha. Kesef is called kinyan. So because Kesef is called kinyan, therefore the Mishnah chooses to go ahead and use the lashon of kinyan instead of the lashon of miskadeshas to highlight Kesef. Beautiful. Says the Gemara Bosef. So base on base 2b, second line down from the top. V'nisni hasam ha'ish kona. So I'll say, okay. So now you've proven to me why ultimately again you want to use the lashon over here of kinyan and not the lashon of miskadeshas, because kinyan highlights Kesef. Got it. So now I'll ask the question a different way. Why not make the second parak uniform with the first? And instead of saying Ha'ish Mekadesh, let it say what? Ha'ish Kona. Just make it uniform. Beautiful. To which the Gemara will tell you. Meikara, Tani Lishan Daraisa, Ulabasov, Tani Lishan Darabanan. I will say in the first Mishnah, i.e. our Mishnah over here, we want to use biblical lashon. So I will say, remember again, on a D'oraisa level, there is no lashon of Kiddushin. Right? There's no lashon of Kiddushin. Remember, we just saw it. We say, remember, on a biblical level, there's lashon of kicha. And a lashon of kinyan. Right? So remember again, kicha would be the biblical lashon for marriage. Ki yikach isha. Right? Kicha. That's the biblical lashon. Now what we're saying is, and kinyan would be the biblical lashon for acquiring something through money. So our Mishnah, Isha Niknis, is choosing to use biblical lashon. Let's start out with biblical phraseology. After that, Ulabasov, Tani Lishna Derabanan. Later on, second parak, we'll use rabbinic lashon. I will say, what's rabbinic lashon? Umay Lishna Derabanan. So I will say, what's rabbinic lashon? Kiddushin, right? Ha'ish Mekadesh. So Kiddushin. By the way, why midrabanan do we call marriage Kiddushin? The asr la'akuli amma kehekdish. Because we'll say it's very simple. You know, my marriage is called Kiddushin because ultimately, again, this woman becomes prohibited to everyone else like hekdish. Also, remember again, you take a piece of wood, you're makdish it to the Bais Hamikdash. So what happens to that piece of wood? So now again, it's so to speak, permitted to the Bais Hamikdash, prohibited to everyone else. So we'll say what happens in marriage, right? A man marries a woman, she is prohibited to everyone else, only permitted to her husband. So that's the rabbinic lashon of Kiddush. Much more to say about that, but we'll finish the daf first. Right? So we'll say, so this all fits in. It's such a beautiful, magnificent Talmudic tapestry. So now all of this fits so perfectly. So we're introduced over here, Ha'isha niknis b'shlosha drachim. Why niknis? The truth is, what we really wanted to start with was the lashon of kicha. Right? That's really what we should have started, because that's biblical lashon. We want to start with biblical lashon. But kinyan is the biblical lashon for acquiring something through kesef. And it's in this Mishnah that out of all three ways are really highlighting the mechanism of kesef. And where is kesef learned out from? Kicha mistei afron. Good. Second parak ha'ish mekadesh. After we use the biblical lashon over here, we use the rabbinic lashon of mekadesh in second parak. Why is that rabbinic lashon? Ultimately, the same way Hekdesh makes something prohibited to everyone else, only prohibited to the Bais Midrash. So to again, marriage makes a woman prohibited to everyone else, only permitted to her husband. Incredible. The nisni hacha ha'ish kona. So I will say, so why? So now Gemara asks again, instead of phrasing this kind of through the lens of the woman, why not phrase this Mishnah through the lens of the man? And instead of saying ha'isha niknis, which literally means a woman is acquired, why not say ha'ish kona, the man acquires? I don't know, you can make this name ha'ish kona es ha'isha, right? Or ha'ish kona bishlosha drachim. A man could acquire a woman in marriage in three ways: kesef, shtar, and bia. Why not phrase it from the man's perspective? Mishum de kabayla misna seifa the kona es atzma. So I will say, because remember, what's the end of the Mishnah? The end of the Mishnah speaks about the concept of a woman, so to speak, acquiring herself. We need to say that. So Tananami Reisha Bidida. So I will say, so because the end of the Mishnah is talking about how she acquires herself through marriage, so therefore how she acquires herself back from marriage. So because that's woman-centric, so therefore we want to make the Mishnah symmetrical, so therefore we open up the Mishnah talking about her as well. V'nisni ha'ish kona umakna. See, I could alleviate that issue. Why don't you just say halacha l'maisa ha'ish kona umakna? A man could acquire, right? Could acquire a woman and could convey herself back to her. Again, I will say, I can't say enough because it sounds so strange to speak about marriage as a form of ownership. So please understand that. And we understand we're not using these lashonos, and it's so important just because it could convey the wrong hashkafa of marriage. We spoke about this yesterday. No person ever owns another human being. And you could have it in avdos, but we don't have it in marriage. Again, remember, we're using a specific lashon of kinyan. Now I know why the Mishnah is using that lashon of kinyan, because kinyan is related to kesef. But again, so why not just say ish kona umakna? Why not just say a man acquires and conveys? The Isa Misa Sabal, because we'll say one of the ways in which a woman, so to speak, acquires herself back from marriage is how? Through the death of a husband, the lav ihu kamakni. So I will say, a man does not control death. He doesn't, so to speak, convey ownership of herself back to her, or convey autonomy back to her. Rather, min shemaya hu demakni la. I will say it's pretty incredible. So in other words, what the Mishnah Gemara is saying is like this: why not write? So let's go through this again. So number one, instead of writing ha'isha niknis, why not say ha'ish kona? So answer number one is because we want to talk about the end of the Mishnah, and the end of the Mishnah speaks about, again, ways in which she regains, so to speak, complete control. She regains complete control. So therefore, again, why not say ha'ish kona umakna? A man acquires and conveys control. To which the Gemara says, because one of the ways in which she goes ahead and regains full control is how? Death of the husband. And that's not something the husband gives her. Lashon of makna means something you give over to someone else. So yeah, get, you give over to someone else. Death, that's not the husband conveying that to his wife, but rather, again, min shemaya. That's ultimately, again, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll say, what a humbling and dramatic statement, right? We go through life thinking that we control everything. Right? And especially those of us who are mamish, like micromanagers, shtetl control freaks, right? So again, right, we've got everything worked out, everything under control, everything is in place. And here the Gemara says, by the way, just understand, when your life begins and when your life ends, those are, no matter how in control you may think you are, those are not things over which you have autonomy. But lamaisa, again, shemaya kumakila, incredible. The other possibility is itana kona. If it would have said kona, in other words, if the Mishnah would have been phrased ha'ish kona, hava amina fila bal karcha. Interesting. You might have thought, say that marriage could even be affected bal karcha, against the will of the woman. Right? Maybe a man has an ability to take a wife in marriage even without her consent. I will say that because, again, lashon of kona means that what? You could acquire something. It makes it sound like it's totally on the acquirer. If I choose to acquire something, I'll acquire it. So therefore, again, the Gemara says, Tana ha'isha niknis. Therefore, use lashon of ha'isha niknis. A woman, it makes it woman-centric. D'midaita in, shalomidaita lo. A woman can only get married again with her consent, but there is no marriage without her consent. Of course, there is technically an exception to this rule, which is Kiddushin Ktana. So you do have, there is a model of marriage that exists without the consent, but again, it's not even a good raya. Why? Because Rabbi said because she's a Ketana, so often, again, her consent wouldn't really even be halal. She's a Ketana. Okay? But in any event, in normative marriage, halacha l'maisa requires the consent of the woman. Okay? We're good. So we'll say, this officially closes out the first part of our discussion. So therefore, halacha l'maisa, we now understand why, working backwards, it's phrased from the woman's perspective. I also understand why we're using the lashon of niknis instead of the lashon of miskadeshes. I also now learn, miskadeshes, sorry. I also now learn the makar for Kiddushin B'Kesef, ultimately kicha mistei Ephraim, which I'm going to come back to still before the shir is over. But let's go right there. Umay area, so we'll say, so now a totally different question. Umay area, the tani shalosh, lisni shlosha. Interesting point over here. Let's remember again, how does the Mishnah read? Ha'isha niknis b'shalosh drachim. So Rabbi said, the Gemara asks over here, why is it that we use the lashon of shalosh? Shalosh is nekeva. Shalosh is feminine. Why do we use the lashon nekeva? Nisni shlosha. Why not go ahead and use shlosha, ultimately again, which is lashon zachar, masculine. Mishum, the kabbalah nisni derech. Because Rabbi said we use the lashon of derech. The derech lashon nekeva. In derech, Rabbi said, which means literally path or mechanisms. Literally path, is feminine. Where do we know that derech is feminine? D'chsev v'hodata lahem es haderech asher yelchu ba. We will say again, the Torah is speaking about over here. V'izartem es hachukim v'es haTorah v'hodatem es haderech asher yelchu ba. Because Baruch saying to Moshe, you will teach them the derech, which refers to Torah. You will teach them the derech that they will walk on. I will say, ba is feminine. So you see from here that derech is nekeva, is feminine, and therefore again, when choosing the number to go before derech, we go with shalosh, ultimately again, which is lashon nekeva, feminine. Okay, pretty straightforward. One second. Derech is nekeva. What about ve'ala hadisanya? B'shiva drachim both kines hazav. It's actually been a while since we've had zav. Right? It's been a while. Like seeing an old friend again. So Gemara says as follows. So b'shiva drachim, the kind you avoid, right? So the Gemara says as follows: b'shiva drachim both kines hazav. We check a zav in 7 ways. I will say now, what does this mean? Take a quick look at Rashi. Both kines hazav. It's the last of the white lines on top. So I will say, remember again, a zav is a man who has a type of emission. Depending on the number of emissions and the frequency of the way those emissions came, so ultimately, again, will determine his tumah and karbanic status. Now, here's the chap with zav. Take a look at Rashi. Now, we'll say, the halacha by zav, this is as opposed to zava, the halacha by zav is, if the emission could be attributed to some other source, for example, something he ate, something he drank, an illness, carrying a heavy load, jumping too much, hirhor, some type of arousing thoughts. That's not zav. So when a man has an emission that we think might be a zav, we check him in a variety of different ways to see about what might or might not be the source, the origin of this zav emission. So listen to this. So b'shiva drachim both kines hazav. Rabbi say now watch what happens. Now let's go back because now we're experts in dikduk. Shiva, masculine or feminine? Masculine. Now it says b'shiva drachim. Now 1 second. We just said Rabbi say derech is derech masculine or feminine? Zachar nekeva. Derech is nekeva. If that's the case, it should be b'sheva drachim both kines hazav. In other words, if you just told me that derech ultimately again is nekeva, is feminine. So therefore again we should use the feminine form of the number sheva and not the masculine form of the number shiva. V'nisni sheva, so say sheva, mishum l'kabayla nisni derech. Because Gemara says no, because we want to use lashon of derech, and derech is lashon zachar. Derech is masculine. What? So we'll say, so now, v'ashkechan derech te'ikri lashon zachar. And v'ashkechan derech te'ikri lashon zachar. Because we find the word derech used in the masculine. Where do we use the masculine? Dichsiv, b'derech echad yetsu elecha, u'b'shiva drachim yanusu lefanecha. It was like in the Torah says, ultimately, right before the Tochacha, when talking about the brachas, right, literally again, your enemies will come, they'll march on you taking one path, and they will run away from you taking 7 different paths, right? It's a reference to like the fear that will seize the invading armies, that they're literally going to scatter. They're going to scatter. So I will say, Se'ihachi, kasha kra adadi, the kasha maslisina adadi. So I will say, so now what do we have? We have contradictory psukim, and we have contradictory mishnayos. So I will say, so now watch what we have. What are our contradictory psukim? On one hand, you told me by Torah, V'odata lahem es haderech asher yelchu ba. Tell them the path they will walk on. Ba, derech, ba. So here, derech is feminine, nikeva. And yet, you're going to both say, Dvarim, you're telling me again, B'shiva drachim yanusu lefanecha. Again, Shiva, masculine. You're telling me that derech, ultimately, again, is masculine. That's contradiction mishnayos. In psukim. What's contradiction mishnayos? So what's I here? You're telling me ha'isha niknis b'shalosh drachim. Shalosh is zachar. I'm sorry. Shalosh is nekeva. Ultimately, again, because derech is nekeva, right? And by zav b'shiva drachim, ultimately, again, the Mishnah is telling me that derech is zachar. So I have 2 contradictory psukim, 2 contradictory mishnayos. Which one is it? Is derech zachar or is derech nekeva? To which the Gemara says, fine. So cry adadi lo kasha. So we'll say it's a contradiction. The psukim are a contradiction. So we'll say essentially what we're going to see is the lashon of derech could be utilized both masculine and feminine. So hacha de b'torah kai. We'll say in the first pasuk that we quoted, v'hodata lohem es haderech asher yelchu ba. You will teach them the path that they will walk on. So we'll say that's talking about Torah. The Torah ikri lashon nekeva. Torah itself is usually referred to in the feminine. Dichsiv Torah's Hashem temima meshivas nafesh. So therefore, kasav la b'lashon nekeva. So I will say when it comes to describing Torah is normally referred to in the feminine, as the Gemara just quotes the pasuk over here. Torah's Hashem temima meshivas nafesh. So therefore, again, it used the lashon of derech in the feminine. Hasam t'v'milchama kai. So when it comes to war, the darko shall ish la'asos milchama, vein darko shall isha la'asos milchama. So Rabbi say war usually has a more masculine overtone, right? It's the derech of men to go out to war, not necessarily, at least biblically, right? Not the derech of women to go out to war. Therefore, kasav lashon zachar. Therefore, the Torah uses derech in the masculine form when it comes to war. So therefore, I both say, essentially what the Gemara is answering is that lashon of derech goes both zachar and nekeva. And again, depending contextually, will determine which gender you're associating the word derech with. So Torah, which is lashon, which Rabbi say is also beautiful. Why is Torah lashon nekeva? Rabbi say because you know what Torah is. Torah is like a loving mother, a loving, nurturing mother. That's what David HaMelech says. Lulei sorascha shashuai as avadati bi'anyi. Were it not for your Torah, Lulei, right? Were it not that I delight in your Torah, I would have lost myself in your serving. I will say, child falls down, right? 9 out of 10 times, who does the child run to, right? When they fall down, the mother. Often the father's going to be like, "Come on, that's nothing to cry about. You're fine, right? You're fine, right? What, right? Come on, you should walk it off, right? What does the mother say? Oh, Shefala, come here, right? The mother holds the child. The mother cuddles the child. The mother, right, is all like the mother, like the child, also thinks that the sky is falling, right? Everybody, that's Torah. Torah is a mother. Torah, I always say, Torah, and remember, Torah is the Ribono Shel Olam. It's Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Klal Yisrael Chaditz. It's all one entity. Torah is a mother. You're having a difficult day. You're not sure what's going on in life. So ultimately, again, Torah is marriage. Torah is that mother. Torah is the nekeva. Like a mother also, a mother's love. Because you know the fundamental distinction between a father's love and a mother's love is, right? A mother's love is unconditional. a father's love, whether we like to admit it or not, is absolutely conditional. We often don't say it, right? Sometimes you just think it, but a father's love is not the same type of love as a mother's love. A mother's love is unconditional. Whatever my child does do or doesn't do, right? A mother's love is there. That's Torah. That's Torah. Torah loves us. Torah loves us regardless of what we do or we don't do. We listen to her, we don't listen to her. We keep her, we don't keep her. We abide by her, we don't abide by her. Right? At the end of the day, Torah loves us unconditionally. The Baruch Hu loves us like a mother. So therefore, again, I would say it's so much more to say about this also. We still have to get back to Ephraim. But I would say, so again, so interestingly enough, it's not a contradiction. Halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says when it comes to Torah is feminine. Therefore, derech, when it comes to Torah, is using the feminine. War is normally a masculine pursuit, a male pursuit, and therefore again we use lashon of derech ultimately again in the masculine. Good. Masnisna adadi nami lokasha. No, sorry, masnisna adadi lokasha. I will say there's no contradiction between the Mishnahs. Remember again, I will say our Mishnah by Kiddushin uses the lashon of the feminine, right? Because remember it says shalosh drachim, right? Versus zav, which used shiva drachim, masculine. Also not a contradiction. Why? Simple answer. We'll say our Mishnah, which is talking about who? A woman. And therefore we'll say again, it uses the lashon of nikeva. It uses feminine lashon. Hasam will say first wide line, beis on the beis. First wide line. Hasam delagabe ish. So the Gemara says there, when by zav, when it's talking about a man, the darko shall ish li badek, the darko shall ish li badek. Ultimately, we'll say, it is the derech of a man to check. This is what we just said before. When it comes to zav, it's only a man who is subject to these examinations, right? Why did he have the emission? But ultimately, again, we'll say by a woman, no matter what the source of the emission, ultimately, again, a woman doesn't check the source of the emission because Ramai again the laws of Zava applies no matter what the source. A woman becomes tmeya through Zav even by an ones, so we'll say even with an extenuating circumstance. Therefore, again, Tani Lashon Zachar. Ultimately, again, it uses the Lashon of Zachar. So we'll say, so a really incredible idea. So therefore, Halacha L'Maisa now learned and picked up another idea, which is that Halacha L'Maisa, the Lashon of Derech is both Zachar and Nekeva. Incredible. So my time, Tani Shalosh Mishum Drachim. So we'll say, so now let's take a step back. So remember, now it's fascinating. By the way, it's such a beautifully methodical daf. The way like everything is coming to place, how I really like dissecting the Mishnah. So now I understand why it's Ha'isha. I also understand why it's Lashon of Niknis, Lashon of Kinyan, associated with Kesef. I also now know why it's Shalosh, because ultimately, again, Nikeva. And now we'll say, I understand why Drachim, right? Derech. But now the Gemara says, why do you use Lashon of Drachim? My time at Tani Shalosh, Mishum Drachim, Nisni Dvarim, V'nisni Shlosha. Why do you have to use the Lashon of Derech? Right? Why not use Lashon of Dvarim? Dvarim, there are three ways in which you can affect Kiddushin. And I will say, by the way, the good news about using are the possibility to use Dvarim, so as opposed to Derech, which can be feminine, therefore puts you in the category of Shalosh. Why not use Dvarim, which again I will say, and you can use Shlosha. I was just asking, not that one is better than the other, we're just asking why he's setting it up this way. Nisni Dvarim, v'nisni Shlosha. Write Dvarim instead of Drachim, and write Shlosha, Mishum the Kabbalim Nisni Bia. Because the Gemara wants to introduce the concept of Bia, or Bia Ikri Derech. And Bia is called Derech. Bia itself is called Derech. T'chsiv, the Derech Gever Ba'alma, Kein Derech Isha Mina Efes. So Hatenach Bia. So fine, so the Gemara says, we want to use Derech because Bia is called Derech. That's fine. But Kesef Shtarn Ma'ikalamim, right? Now what's about Kesef and Shtarn? Kesef and Shtarn are not called Derech, so what do you do about those? Mishum Bia. Well, say you're right, we're using that for the Lashon of Derech because of Bia. The Tani Tarti Atuchada. So we'll say, I don't understand. Because one of the three mechanisms is called Derech, you're going to use one of the three to determine the Lashon of the Mishnah. Why not go after two of the three? And two of the three are not called Derech, so you can use Dvarim. Hanach Nami Tzorech Bia Minhu. But because at the end of the day, I will say, the ultimate goal, what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is Bia. What does it mean the ultimate goal is Bia? In other words, the marital relationship is solidified and concretized through Bia. See, even remember again, even if Halacha L'Maisa, Kiddushin is affected through shtar or through kesef, right? The ultimate culmination of the marriage comes through bia. Through bia. So therefore, again, as much as all three are equally powerful in terms of affecting marriage, lemaisa, again, bia itself has a separate status. The other possibility is Hamani, Rabbi Shimon. So who's paying this reflect? So Rabbi Shimon. You say Rabbi Shimon Omer, Neima Amr Torah Kikach Ishi. So what's the other possibility is as follows. The other, actually, I'll say, let me pause here for just a moment. Let me pause here just a moment. So before, let's do this. I want to figure out. Fine, let's finish. No, let me tell you, because otherwise, because tomorrow's coming out. So I'll say, pause here just a second. We have time to go back. Let me just finish out the Ephraim piece. I should have just done it before. Anyway, so remember again, we learned out Kesef from Kicha Mistei Ephraim. So just want to point out how interesting it is that and I will say just to show you how dramatic that is. To this day, right, when we do Kiddushin, ultimately Kiddushin is affected through Kesef, right, under the chuppah contemporarily. We go ahead, right, husband gives wife, or man gives woman, right, a ring. So that is Kiddushin b'Kesef. So now what turns out is that halacha l'maisa, we're learning that out through Kicha Mistei Ephraim. We'll say, why is it that the transaction on Rasa Machpelah, which is fascinating, why is it that transaction that serves as the source for Kiddushin? So we'll say, so perhaps the yisod is like this. So if you look at Parshas Chayei Sarah, when Avram Avinu was purchasing a burial plot, if you look at the way that Avram mourned Sarah, right? Because the purchasing of the burial plot is the culmination of the mourning for Sarah Imenu. How does Avram Avinu mourn Sarah? So what does the pasuk say? Vayavo Avraham lispod l'Sarah v'livkosa. Avram Avinu came to eulogize Sarah and ultimately again to eulogize her and to cry for her. Rishon Shnefal Hirsch says, if you think about it, we'll say intuitively, it's out of order. What should the pasuk have said? Right? To go ahead and to cry for Sarah. Livkos l'Sarah v'lispoda. Right? Because crying over loss is like instinctive. It just happens. Eulogizing usually requires thought, organization of thoughts, right? Writing something down, telling it over. So it should say Avram came to cry for Sarah and to eulogize for her. And Rav Hirsch says something absolutely amazing. Rav Hirsch explains that wherein lies the distinction between eulogizing and crying. He says crying is the way I mourn my loss. Crying is for me. Eulogizing is for others. Is for others, right? Especially in the case of Sarah Imenu, the loss of Sarah Imenu was not just for her husband, it was for everyone else. So the eulogy is how I convey the greatness of this person to someone else. Hirsch brings down, he says something amazing. He says the greatness of Avram Avinu is when he lost his beloved life partner, he put his own loss on the side and instead focused on what this loss meant for everyone else. Right? That's what it means by Abraham, the spod, the Sarah. First was the eulogy, take care of everyone else's loss, and then ultimately, again, then his own loss. And I will say, and then what happens? He purchases Maras Machpelah. So perhaps the Gemara is telling us is, this becomes a paradigm for marriage. I will say, what's the key to successful marriage? I have no idea. But, it could be that a major step towards creating a beautiful, harmonious, loving, and enduring marriage is you put your needs second and the needs of the other first. It's not about me. It's not about I want, I need. Successful marriage says, I put the needs of my spouse. And obviously, if you have two people doing that, if you have two people putting each other on a pedestal, you have two people making each other the center of their respective universes, you have two people saying, your needs are most important. Your needs are most important. And I would say that is a blissful union. And perhaps that's why the Gemara chooses to learn out the concept of Kiddushin, Kesef, Mistei Ephron. Take me back to Ephron, because when you take me back to Ephron, you see how a husband ultimately again treats his wife. You see what it means to build. How do you build a successful Kiddushin? Kicha, Mistei Ephron, Vayavo Avraham Nispoda Sarav Livkosa. Put your needs second. Put the needs of your spouse first. And that ultimately is a Kiddushin which will endure. So we'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach will pick up again with Rabbi Shimon and Yiras Hashem. It's a short daf tomorrow. Pick up Yiras Hashem with Rabbi Shimon tomorrow. Incredible Askalah to Kiddushin. Mazel Tov. Shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone.